Welcome back to the Lion's Den. In this episode, we speak with Hannah Leone, the Chief Operating Officer of Foundation Wealth Management. Now, I found this conversation to be very useful for me personally, but also for any of you entrepreneurs out there who, like me, want to find the right balance between investing in your business and making sure you diversify your personal wealth over time. Enjoy. Hannah, welcome to the Lion's Den.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
So you are the Chief Operating Officer at Foundation Wealth Management. Mm-hmm. Let's just start off with an easy question. What do wealth managers do? I think that's an easy question. You tell me.
I think that's an easy question. It should be anyway. So wealth managers help people, individuals, take what they have and grow it, and then also help them just get where they would like to be. So we figure out what matters to them, what they're worried about, where they're trying to go, and then we try to help create a plan that gets everybody there.
Okay, got it. And so we work with entrepreneurs. That's, we help them grow their businesses. And I know that many of your clients are also entrepreneurs. Do you approach wealth management differently for those types of clients?
We do. I mean, every relationship starts in the same way. So when we meet a prospective client, we start with essentially a confidential where we ask a ton of questions, and that's around where they are currently. As I mentioned, what they're worried about, who the players are, who they're responsible for. And of course, that could be employees, it can be kids, it can be spouses, it can be dependent parents or siblings. So we learn about them and what matters to them. We learn about what they have available to them in terms of assets, what they're responsible for in terms of debt. And this is like an exhaustive kind of hour-long meeting where it feels like you've gone to confession. You tell us all the things. Hopefully you feel comfortable enough to tell us all the things. So around like, what's your credit score like? How's your personal health? How are your parents? How old were they? Are they living? Are they healthy? How old were they when they passed? What are your attitudes about money? Have you experienced a downturn in the market? Really just exhaustive kind of everything around the psychology of financial planning and the specifics for that person. And then we create a plan. So we take all that information, we do a comprehensive customized financial plan for each client, which hopefully is really representative of the conversation that we had. It's very much a working document. It can change over time and will, because thankfully our relationships usually cover a long period of time. We have a 95% year-over-year client retention rate. We literally only lose clients if someone dies or there's a divorce. And even in those instances, usually we keep both clients just as separate relationships.
You plan for those things. You probably plan for death and divorce for your clients.
Well, as much as we can. And we are really privileged to have those conversations with people, when things are in their difficult moments. People are usually thinking about the people that they care about and the impact that this is going to have on them psychologically, and very close behind is financially, sometimes even before, depending on the individual person. So we have conversations that are very, very personal. So we do the plan, we present the plan. Hopefully the client sees the value add there of working with an advisor like us. We really strive to come up with in the plan, we do different iterations of analyses where it's like, your current savings and investing plan is going to get you here with these assumptions. We expect you're going to be here at age 65, 70, 100, and hopefully you've still got money left then, right? But we're going to come up with ideas, and we're going to show you the impact of those ideas over long periods of time. And in scenario one, which is current, you end up with $2 million at your age 100. And if you implement the things that we are recommending, then you end up with a multiple of that, right? And so hopefully it's very, very obvious in the plan, the benefit, the value add of working with a fiduciary fee-only wealth advisor, which is what we are. So a lot of that stuff is applicable to you, whether you're a business owner, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are have inherited money or have a windfall, all kinds of things. So there are parts of it that are the same across the board, regardless of how you got where you are. But there are certain things, of course, that are specific to each segment of clients, like women in transition who are experiencing a divorce or a death or something like that. Entrepreneurs and business owners have a whole different set of considerations, and we try to help them mitigate risk, right? Plan, look for opportunities for diversification, because the entrepreneurial mindset is often, I'm just going to keep putting it back in my business. I'm just going to keep growing my business. And usually that works because people that are entrepreneurs have, spirits that work really hard, that are fighting spirits, that are passionate. But to also have your own wealth portfolio helps diversify against some of that risk. And so we help them to see that and help them plan for exit strategy and get the right insurances in place and the right estate planning in place. I mean, we do that for every single client, but for entrepreneurs, it's also specific to that space.
Okay. So I want to dig into each of those topics then, because I think that's really interesting. So let's start with, I guess a question. If you have an entrepreneurial client, you're not a virtual CFO or a CFO for that client, right? And they have their own business financials, and presumably a big chunk of their asset base is their business. So like what role do you play in kind of like looking at their company financials as you create the plan? Are you always looking at the company's financials? How does that integration work?
We do not frequently look at the company's financials. We look more at the tax return. So we'll look at the company tax return and how that feeds into their personal tax return. We'll look at how the company is handling, salary versus distributions and the cash flow planning of that. We, at the outset of every relationship, and then we update it every year, we have a statement of net worth, right? And that's kind of one of the old adages of financial planning is like, before you do anything, you need to lay out your statement of net worth and figure out, what do I have? What do I owe? How does that net together? And then where am I? And that's the financial kind of fitness exam you do every year, right? And then for an entrepreneur, there's of course a line item that's the business value. And a lot of times people don't have any idea of what their business is worth. They understand what it's worth to them in terms of cash flow, but they don't understand what it's worth on the market, what it could be sold for, where ultimately they might have an exit strategy or pass it off or something like that. So we often talk about business valuations. And having that done periodically, and then we end up on the receiving end of conversations around, I had a junior partner and I want to bring them on, and how can I figure out how to do that, and for them to have a piece of this equity, what does that look like? And again, a lot of that has to do with having someone value the business and then structure how to do a transfer of equity over time. So yeah, all kinds of things that we get to be a part of.
Okay, got it. So you had mentioned diversification, risk management. So let's talk about that for a second, because I mean, I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I know that I have had times where I'm growing a business and it's like every dime I'm making, I'm just plowing back into the business. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs do that with the goal of eventually they reach that point where it's self-sustaining and highly profitable, and then they're golden. So when you're working with a client like that, how do you help them balance reinvesting in their business versus taking some money off the table from time to time to build personal wealth?
So as part and parcel of the plan, and then ultimately financial reviews, we have cash flow analysis where we're taking a look at what it takes in order for you to enjoy your life, right? So hopefully you are running at a surplus every month, and otherwise that's kind of first step. But hopefully we do the cash flow waterfall. You've got your income, your expenses, and you're running at a surplus. And understanding that spend is something that we need to do to make sure that our analyses are correct for future planning, right? So entrepreneurs are very like in the current moment, and they have a vision, of course, for their business, but it might be hard to imagine what ultimately, I mean, can you imagine a time when you are not doing this, when you're not dedicating 6 days a week to it?
Nope. I want to keep doing this for a while.
And if you were not spending 6 days a week, 7 days a week, crazy hours doing this, you would spend your money differently, right? You probably travel in a different way. You may or may not have homes in different places. what your future is going to look like with respect to kids and educations, what you want to provide for them. So we look at the cash flow now. We look at the future desired cash flow, and then that kind of opens up the conversation of, you believe and you hope that this business is going to get to the place where it's, as you mentioned, self-sustaining, throwing off money for you. You have a legacy and you have financial flexibility. And hopefully that happens, and very likely, I believe in your case, it will, of course. But you want to have a hedge, right? And you want to be able to participate in other companies' growth. And so there's some kind of adages where it's like, we want to make sure first, of course, that you have 6 to 12 months. If you're a single earning household, it's 6 to 12 months. If you're a dual income household, and it's pretty similar amounts of income, that you have at least 3 months of spend, liquid, high yield savings. That's like number one, right? So once that has been obtained, then we want for our clients, and especially clients maybe that investable assets are below what we would have as our minimum, we have a buy-in where we require that they save and invest 20% of what they make. And that's so that they can be able to retire for sure, very likely, at a normal retirement age. And so we would back into that number as well. So that's kind of how we get the base that we want them to be able to save. And then for people that have lumpy income, they have distributions. We talk about the psychology of that, right? So we want you to save and invest half of the lumpy distributions that you get. And you might have ideas about the other part that you want to do it. And we want you to enjoy your life. You're working hard, and we're not counting every dollar that you make and spend, but we also want to keep at the forefront the long-term plan here, and the fact that your life isn't always going to look like this, and someday you're going to want to be able to do different things, and it's our job to help set you up for success there.
Got it. Okay. No, this is really eye-opening for me. Honestly, it sounds like you have a set of frameworks and formulas that are sort of like best practice, tried and true. Obviously there's some customization, but
Yeah.
you bring those to bear and help people plan for the future. I mean, it's similar to, when we're on a consulting engagement and, our client is saying, are we pricing our products correctly? And it's like, well, here's a couple frameworks. We can look at that idea through to figure that out. Okay. So you're bringing frameworks to bear. I like that. Do you find that, because I'm also realizing that a big part of what you do is just help people like think about their future and what they want that future to be. Like, do you find that a lot of people, when you're like, okay, so what do you want to be doing in 20 years? Do you find a lot of people are just like, I don't know. I've never thought about it.
Yeah, we usually start, like, one of the first things that we ask is, when do you want to retire? And there's two answers to that question. There's like, tomorrow, as soon as possible. And those people are not where you and I are, where they're enjoying what they're doing every day. And then you have people that are like, I can't imagine a time where I wouldn't be working. And so then we help them frame it like, when would you like the option to not to have to work? Because that's easier for people to digest, right? It's like, I can't imagine a time I wouldn't be, like, what would I do with myself? So we have those conversations, and then we talk about, when you're retired, what do you want your life to look like? And the psychology of financial planning is such a huge part of it. It's a segment of the CFP. I'm a certified financial planner. People that are CFPs are required to demonstrate knowledge in that aspect, and then also have continuing ed requirements around it. So the psychology of financial planning is a huge piece. And I mean, you could argue that that's the piece that's not going to disappear in AI, right? I mean, this is a whole different tangent, but brokerage, the brokerage model, the just trading model, I think that's been shown that can be done by a computer, and probably will continually get better by a computer. We've got all these models where it's like, oh, you can just follow what Nancy Pelosi is doing, but of course you're on a delay, and it's not meaningful, but the psychology of that is there. But I think that the financial planning, the comprehensive relationship management, the psychology piece, that's not something that's easily replicable. And so that, I think, is why we keep our clients, and that is what I like most about what I do.
That's really cool. Do you find that you have clients who are, in the present or in the future, you're sort of like looking at what their wealth base is going to be, and you're realizing like, oh wow, there's a lot of wealth here, and
Hmm.
you realize that they are maybe penny pinchers in a way.
Hmm.
Is that part of the psychology, is kind of coaching them into like enjoying what they've earned?
Yes. So often we have clients, I mean, we have to have conversations with clients where we tell them they are in a position where they can increase spend. We have clients where we show them the illustration of you've done such an excellent job, you've gotten to this point, and a lot of times we get clients who they get to like $1 million or $2 million, and then they're like, okay, I'm scared now. Like this is, I did it by myself and that was fun. It was kind of gamified, but now I'm at a stage of my life and I'm dealing with an asset level where I'm nervous and I want more help. And so when we show the modeling of you've done such a good job up to this point, we've got some tweaks to the plan and we're going to get you to this point. And then they look at it and they're like, wow, like I'm going to have $8 million at my age 100 and I'm going to do all the things that I want to do up until that point. And then we have conversations like, well, maybe you don't want to have $8 million at your age 100. Maybe you don't want your kids to inherit whatever amount it's going to be. So there's different levers we can pull and we model it for them. So if it's like, well, I never really thought it was open to me, but what if I did have 6 months out of the year that I spent in Vero Beach? And then we model that. I think a lot of it is showing them the opportunities that are available, and then moving those levers. Right? We're talking about analyses over long periods of time. So change of any assumption is going to change a lot of things, but we can show them, and then they can kind of start to wrap their arms around it. So that's a ton of what we do.
Wow. And so I'm kind of curious. So you mentioned like the Vero Beach thing. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's like spending more time traveling, buying additional homes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
probably philanthropic
Yep.
activity is another one. Like what are
Yep.
some of these ways where it's like, we got to find a way to spend this money?
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of times we talk about funding donor advised funds for people that are in situations where they're going to end up with a bunch of money, and maybe they're in a situation where they're earning a lot of money. We talk about pre-funding donor advised funds in the years where they have lots of income, so that they can have that tax coupon, and then kind of be ready to dole it out in retirement or at whatever stage. So we talk about that for sure. We talk about increasingly conversations around not only planning for your own children, but planning for your grandchildren.
Interesting.
Because so people are living longer, right? And people are getting to know their grandchildren in a different way than maybe happened in previous generations. And the psychology around money with that too is changing, where they're like, I don't want to give all my money to my children and hope that they do well with it and then pass it on to their kids when I'm a distant memory. They haven't seen me in 40 years. I want, when I pass, to kind of cordon off a portion of my assets for that next generation. So we see that happening a lot. We see pre-funding of education accounts of 529s for the tax benefit there, depending on where you live. There's lots of different things we can do.
Yeah. The grandkid thing is really interesting. So, and let's maybe talk about that within the lens of like estate planning, wealth transfer in
Mm-hmm.
general. I know that I think a lot of people kind of worry about that, like making sure as they pass money on to their kids,
Mm-hmm.
they don't get hit with an estate tax or so,
Right.
half of their money disappears.
Right.
So I'm sure that's a big thing that you work with your clients on. Are there like specific tools and
Yep.
tips that they should know about? And are there new like mechanisms that can pass things down to grandkids now that the demand for that is higher? Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about all that.
Yeah, so we have you might know, some of the people that are watching this might know that the estate tax exemption right now in the US is really high. So it's, like 27, 28 million per couple currently. It's
That
set
means you can pass that on without it being taxed. Okay.
exactly. Yeah, there's no federal tax on a inheritance up to that point. And then beyond it, it's essentially, I think it's a 40% federal estate tax haircut, and then sometimes there is a state by state estate tax as well. But under current law, that is set to sunset, or to half rather, in 2026. So in 2026, it goes from inflated 30 million to 15 million per married couple, or 7.5 million per individual. So that's gonna make a whole different group of people start to be worried about that. So estate planning attorneys for sure are filling up their calendars over the next 18 months. So yeah, I mean, we see clients do things like family limited partnerships. We see people doing charitable trusts. We work really closely, so we're totally agnostic about which estate planning firms our clients work with. We don't have that in-house, but we see it for the 200 client relationships that we have for our firm. So we sit in on those meetings. We pose questions and ideas. We're certainly not attorneys, but we see a lot of it. So we are in discussions around that, and it's going to become increasingly important as the legislative environment changes here in the next 18 months. Now, of course, through an act of Congress, something else could happen, but we don't know a whole lot of things about what the government's going to do over the next 18 months. So we're planning for our high net worth clients that estate planning is going to be the kind of number one topic of discussion over the next 18 months.
Wow. How do you stay up to date on all the craziness that comes across in new legislation and new financial tools? Like, how do you keep up to date on that?
Yeah. That is, so we're required with the CFP, we're required to have continuing education every year. So we've got, 30 to 60 hours across different financial planning topics that we have to do. And then it's also just like, news consumption, watching Bloomberg, listening to NPR, all kinds of things.
CNN, Fox News, yeah.
Right. And also the professional organizations that we belong to and the professionals with whom we work. So sometimes crazy things happen, like, the Secure and Secure 2.0 Act that came across, and it's, hundreds of pages of stuff that Congress passes at the last minute with not really a lot of guidance or planned timeline for implementation. So kind of figuring out what's in there and how that's going to be implemented at the custodian level it's constant, right? It's constant learning and staying nimble. But I think that's also part of what I love about it, and what makes us valuable to our clients, because we have clients that are business owners that didn't know, hey, with the Secure 2.0, you now can do an employer match that's Roth, and you should enable that in your plan, and your clients or your employees might like that. And if you were my client, I would recommend you take it that way. So there's all kinds of things buried in there that hopefully about, and you can take advantage of. We go to these conferences, and it's the quickest way to wealth is to take advantage of legal statutory tax loopholes. And so we are always kind of, looking for those and adding those into our quiver of arrows.
I love that. And speaking of quiver of arrows, I mean, do you think that a business owner within its quiver of advisor arrows, like they usually have an accountant, they've got a lawyer. Most of them don't have a wealth advisor from what I've seen, the smaller companies.
Yep.
For sure. So are you just like, do you think every business owner should have that? And do you think that there is like communication that should be happening between those different players? What's your theory on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it's additive. I think that a lot of business owners don't have wealth advisors, don't have financial planners. They very frequently have, a buddy that works at Stifel and is now their broker. And that's just a completely different model than what we do. And I think that people increasingly, with the fiduciary rule discussion, people are becoming more interested in what a fee-only advisor, what a legal fiduciary, someone who is required by law to do what's in your best interest. And that, as set up as a registered investment advisory, which is how Foundation Wealth Management is set up, we are legally fiduciaries. Now, the Edward Jones guy may or may not be a fiduciary. He probably isn't, and you should find out and ask. But I think people are increasingly interested in and knowledgeable about the benefits of working with a fee-only advisor and a wealth advisor, someone who looks at holistically what's going on in your life, every facet of the financial crystal, versus, hey, this is what you have in your trust account and I'm going to make it grow. And that's just not what we do. We do that and so much more. So, yeah, I think everybody could use a CFP wealth advisor. I think a lot of people don't have it. And I also think that, I think that the more people know about it and the more that estate planning attorneys, accountants, risk management, insurance brokers, et cetera, talk about it. We do have a lot of partners that do refer to us because they look at what we do and it's really different than a lot of other places. So we're lucky in that respect. But yeah, I wish we could clone ourselves a million times and everybody could have a fiduciary as their wealth manager.
Yeah, makes total sense. I mean, I can clearly see the value. So, all right. So somebody listening to this, right? Mm-hmm. One of the 15 nuggets of wisdom you dropped on us in this call, if they really want to reach out to you about it, what's the best way for them to get in touch with Foundation Wealth Management?
Yeah. So going to our website would be great. I mean, there's a contact form on there. You can give us a call, of course. Should I say what our website is, or you drop that, or what should I do?
Yeah, you could say it and I'll link to it. I'll link to it as well.
Okay, perfect. It's FWM Foundation Wealth Management, FWMRIA.com. And as I mentioned, we're a registered investment advisory. So it's right there in the name.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. Super educational. And I hope I see you soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.